and we are recording. The the gig is up, guys. I'm coming out as a Fed. This is my handler. This is Fed Colin. I'm Fed Tommy. It's over. We we ran the charade for a solid half decade. It's good, but it's over now. So you can see I'm wearing my lower tier Fed black polo. He's wearing his higher tier Fed men in black suits. So it's just what it is, and I would imagine that someone's gonna come kill me now. But today is Wednesday, May 15th, 2024, 12:10 p.m. Eastern Time with Mr. John Cullen, the first show without the incognito dress up. And guys, please go in the description. Please go find this podcast on Frank's Speech, Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy, his video platform. They are sponsoring the show. So if you like the episodes that I do with John Cullen or with the Delta Force guys or anything in between, and you like the freedom it has, please support those that support the show. You can go to the description and follow Mr. Cullen's Twitter. Mr. Cullen, please take it away, sir.
Well, good to see you.
You too, buddy.
It's great to be back. I guess it was about 2 months ago that I was on the show with you and Dave Collum.
Yeah, Dave. And then before that, Amy, right?
Right. And Dr. Scott Jensen.
Oh, yeah.
And it was that show. I guess it was almost exactly 2 months ago. It was like 2 months ago this week.
Okay.
That Adam Curry, who used to be one of the MTV DJs or VJs. So Adam Curry has a podcast with John C. Dvorak, and it's called the No Agenda Podcast. So he gets referred to watch the show. And he's talking. Yeah. So on his podcast, he and John C. Dvorak start talking about, hey, somebody sent me this link to this Tommy's podcast thing. And it's Dave Collum and it's Dr. Scott Jensen and it's Tommy's podcast. And there's this guy on the podcast with a hat and sunglasses. And Adam Curry is like, really? Like, really? I got to watch this. So I listened to it. And what was interesting was Adam Curry's explanation or his rearticulation of what we were covering was really good. Like he really got it. It's like he watched it, he listened, and he was like, damn, this changes everything if this is true. So I have that clip, and it might be interesting for the audience to sort of recap, because a bunch of people may not have seen that show that we did with Dave Collum and Dr. Scott Jensen. And you and I have done a couple shows since the new year together. But this is a clip of Adam Curry from the No Agenda podcast talking to John C. Dvorak about my last appearance here on your show with Dave Collum and Dr. Scott Jensen. And he's talking to John C. Dvorak about how Donald Trump keeps talking about how the vaccine saved everybody, and he did the vaccines, and the vaccines are great, and they're going to save cancer, cure cancer, whatever. And he's like, you're kind of blowing your base. Adam Curry sees the video, and this is what he had to say. So let me play this for the audience and see what you guys think. You haven't heard this yet, have you? Did you hear this?
I was gonna say, okay. And before you play, I was gonna say it's always funny when I'll find a comment that big. I found your show last week, and I gotta admit, at first I thought you were fat, gay, and stupid, and you know what? You're not a dumb guy. And I'm like, thanks, man.
Right, now you're just fat and gay.
Yeah, I'm like, right. Thank you, thanks for the subscription.
Exactly. All right, so let's see. I've got this video queued up. Let me go into share mode here, and I'll share this. And you guys let me know if you can see that.
Yep.
And I'll hit play, and I'll be quiet. So this is Adam Curry, former VJ from MTV, talking to John C. Dvorak on the No Agenda podcast after my last appearance here with you.
Trump with his vaccine, he keeps bringing this up, which it seems so misguided, because this is the one thing his base, and when I say his base, I'm looking at you, Fredericksburg, Texas, his base hates this. They can't believe that he's still promoting the shot, the backs, all these, like, seriously, this is, there are people who say, because, and I don't want to vote for him now because he tweeted that or truthed that or whatever. And again, he said, the pandemic no longer controls our lives. The vaccines that saved us from COVID are now being used to help beat cancer, turning setback into comeback. You're welcome, Joe. 9-month approval time versus 12 years that it would have taken you. So, yeah, I'm like, okay, whatever. It is what it is. But
we have to stop.
Well, I'm going to explain it.
Oh, why he's doing this?
Yes, I'm going to explain.
Or why he's missing
why
the
he's
messaging.
Why he's doing this. He is, I believe, now very sincere, but not for the reasons we think. And people have been sending me this video for the past 3 days. It's a Rumble video. There's 4 guys on the screen. One guy, the main guy talking, is wearing a black hat and sunglasses. You can imagine, and it's 2.5 hours long. You could imagine, I'm like, no, it's all right. I'm not going to watch that. And I keep getting this video. No, you got to watch it. This is really, So last night, I finally watch it. It's,
yay.
Sorry?
I said yay.
Yeah, yay. Well, the first...
Because I wasn't going to watch it.
Have you received this video from anybody?
I heard about it.
Yeah, was the vax for something else? And on this video is Dr. Scott Jensen, Dave Collin, and John Collin, and then Tommy. It's his video channel, Tommy's channel. And the thesis that this guy, the guy in the hat and the glasses, comes up with is very interesting.
I'll take it.
Yeah, so the guy in the hat and the glasses has been talking about COVID now for 4+ years, and protecting my identity, it seemed to be a prudent thing to do, given how many people suffered from ad hominem attacks. I don't know if you've had Dr. Aaron Cariati on the show, or Paul Marik,
yeah.
All right, so a lot of the doctors got fired from the places.
I found so many doctors that have had their MDs revoked.
Okay, so Scott Jensen is in a lawsuit with Keith Ellison in Minnesota over this. The Minnesota Medical Board came after Dr. Scott Jensen. So we've seen this with all these physicians who simply spoke out and said, this is what I'm seeing. This is my experience. And all of a sudden, their medical credentials are in jeopardy mid-career. 2/3 of the way through their career, all of a sudden they're going to lose the ability to practice medicine. So when you look at the ad hominem attacks, there was a certain simplicity in my anonymity with the disguise. And what that meant was, it's the opposite of Milgram bias. Do you know what Milgram bias is and the Milgram experiment?
I know the Milgram experiment. I don't know what the bias is.
So Milgram bias is probably a term I came up with based on the Milgram experiment, because I love cognitive biases. And the Milgram experiment, many people know, the person who's conducting the experiment is telling the person who's at this side of the table, ask questions. If the person gets the thing wrong, you're going to hit the buzzer, right? And they're going to get a little electric shock on the other side if they get the thing right. And that if you get one wrong and then you get the next one wrong, we're going to turn the voltage up just a little bit more for the next shock. So if you get that one wrong, now you got 15 volts, right? And if you get this next one wrong, that's 20 volts. Well, now you're starting to huff and puff. And they start asking questions like, so for example, now that you've been shocked 3 times, Tommy, the next question is 3 times 8.
24.
No, that's wrong.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm remembering.
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
Yeah.
And the guy who's buzzing the other guy is looking at the doctor with the clipboard and going, no, 3 times 8 is 24. That's right. And he goes, proceed to the next question.
Yeah, authority.
Proceed to the next question, right? Okay. And they keep upping the voltage, and now the guy's screaming on the other end.
Yeah.
What he doesn't realize is the guy who's screaming on the other end is not really getting electrocuted. There's no shocks hooked up. It's all
the test is on the guy pressing the button, not vice versa.
Right. And the idea is that because they're in a white lab coat, people listen to them.
Yeah.
And I call that Milgram bias, right? So the opposite of Milgram bias would be if I put on one of those Halloween masks from those, those latex mask companies that make these crazy, scary masks. What if I wore one of those, right? What if I wore one of those and shared the mapping data? What if all the data was identical, but I looked like somebody from a horror movie with a mask on? It would be absurd.
Annie Jacobson's book Area 51 talks about just after World War II, Nazis come back, and inside the Nevada test site is Groom Lake, Area 51, and they started doing tests with the first jet engines, and the other pilots would see a jet with no propeller going really fast, and they would talk about it in the local bars. Counterintelligence said we got to quash that. They started giving the pilots, it's a very well-known story now, they started giving the jet pilots gorilla masks. And if you see another propeller plane, you put on the gorilla mask and you look at them. So when they tell the story in the bar, they go, this thing's fast. It looked like a German Messerschmitt, but it's going faster. I mean, are there Nazis here? What's going on? No propeller, super fast, super loud. And a gorilla is flying. Yeah, you lose your wings. Get out of here.
Right. You gotta love it.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Gotta love it. So the point here is that the get up I was in wasn't helping things, and it was protecting my security in that I didn't want to be recognized in the street is really the net of it. And a lot of it was because of the Las Vegas shooting investigation, because what I discovered was it was really Al-Qaeda, and they're kind of ruthless. So, you look at what they stab people in the eye, things like that. So protecting my identity out in the street so that people don't walk up to me and say, oh, you're John Cohen, seemed prudent. But it was having a deleterious effect on the information. People, and again, I don't hold Adam Curry, like, to me, it's not a bad thing. I understood it. And that's why I decided the time had come. And so on the 5th anniversary of returning back to the United States, I took off the outfit. In fact, I think it was just days after we did that last show. And so I took off the disguise, and now there's not much of a good reason to not want to sit down and talk about these findings. It's like, it's one thing if it's like, yeah, he's some internet clown, he's some YouTube, in a costume, and, that's one thing, right? And he's, behind a screen, you can't tell who he is, whatever. Well, we're not doing that anymore. So now the question is, so let's take a look at the data. What seems to be the problem with the data? And why does everybody think that ignoring some of these findings it is a prudent thing to do? Like, how do you ignore this? Like, is that an adult thing to do? Let me share with the audience just a little bit of the background here, because again, I don't want to assume that anybody knows or has seen any of these shows that we've done together before. This may be their first viewing of us together, right? So they saw the guy in the hat and the glasses and said, we don't want to watch that. All right, so I'm on Twitter. A hashtag I use often is I am the Maps Daddy. And if you click on that hashtag, you'll see all the tweets in which I've included that hashtag. And I'm pretty much the only guy on Twitter who uses that hashtag. And I use it whenever I'm talking about geo-specific information, meaning location-specific. I might be talking about Vietnam. I might be talking about Cambodia. I might be talking about Australia. But if I'm talking about a location, I'll often use the hashtag I am the Maps Daddy. And that's because 35 years ago, I was working at Oracle. And I led the team at Oracle that built the mapping system at the top of the page. It's called ArcGIS or ArcInfo, from a company called ESRI. So I was a young guy at Oracle, and this company wanted to build this thing. They wanted to marry data and maps together. And that's pretty much what we did with that. Well, what I've been documenting over the course of the pandemic was that influenza was going crazy before COVID, and it got my attention. Like, when I started digging into baseline information, 4,000 people were dying a week of influenza in January of 2020 before COVID. And I discovered these new findings that just recently, in the last couple of months, that changed everything. That basically made me retract my hypothesis. But the net of it is this blue stuff here is not COVID. That's influenza and pneumonia deaths. That's not COVID. Right? So this appears to be what everybody's been trying to hide, and what I think the COVID Select Committee is still hiding, to be quite frank with you. I think they're still hiding this. So this is some of the findings in just the last couple months. First of all, a lot of attention on bird flu right now. This week, last week, a lot of attention on bird flu. But weren't we talking about bird flu the first week in January? Didn't I share with you, right? Early on, I said
contagion, the whole China,
right. And so
Kaylee
McEnany, she's running around with all this stuff. So again, now here we are in May, the 5th month of the year, and the first week of the year, we were talking about this. Now, what I'm showing the audience right now, what we know about the deadliest U.S. bird flu outbreak in history. Deadliest bird flu outbreak in history in 2022? What? 2 years ago? You mean during COVID? I thought bird flu is avian influenza, right? Right? Bird flu is a colloquialism for avian influenza. I thought Dr. Fauci said influenza disappeared. How could it disappear and kill all the chickens? According to this, it's the worst bird flu outbreak ever in history. And Dr. Fauci said flu disappeared. Maybe Dr. Fauci doesn't know any chickens or doesn't eat chicken. Maybe he's a vegan and chickens don't count. I don't know. I thought for 3.5 years it was H1N1 1918 Spanish flu. And I was wrong. But I was close. And I was closer than anyone else by like 10 miles. Like no one even realized there were 2 pandemics. And this is where we get into sort of the fundamental problem here, and why I have very little respect for pretty much any physicians right now. Nobody knows this. There were 2 pandemics. Influenza, well documented, going crazy in January 2020. 4,000 people dying a week. And then COVID shows up out of the blue. COVID is the green one. And so sort of the saying I came up with was Dr. Fauci and Langley couldn't hide the blue pandemic without the green pandemic. The green pandemic is all deaths with COVID, including George Floyd. Okay?
Yeah.
That's the green. All right? So George Floyd, COVID death, right? The lady who drove the van with the kids into the lake and everybody died, they were COVID deaths too. Everybody tested positive for COVID. So that's all the green stuff. The blue is influenza and pneumonia, which kind of go together like peanut butter and jelly. Right? You don't just eat a jelly sandwich. That's disgusting. Right? So P&I is pneumonia and influenza. So it looks like they had to hide the blue pandemic. Now, why would you need to hide a pandemic? Well, I thought it was because it was reconstructed pandemic 1918, reconstructed H1N1. Talbenberger, they dig it up from the permafrost. They come back from Alaska. They gene sequence this thing. This is like one of the deadliest things on Earth.
Horror movie beginning.
Seems like a perfect fit. But then we find this material saying that Department of Defense was monitoring an avian flu, and HHS and Azar are running an operation called Crimson Contagion for 8 months. That's not a simulation. Event 201 was 3 hours. It started at 1 in the afternoon and was over at 4. Okay, everybody grab your little bag of goodies. Thanks for playing. You got old Johns Hopkins hat. It was 3 hours long. Crimson Contagion started in January 2019, wrapped up in August of 2019. But Kaylee's running around with Crimson Contagion stuff in April of 2020. Crimson contagion was an H7N9 outbreak in China in the poultry, and that wasn't a simulation. That was actually happening in China. And so when you start looking at this documentation from the Pentagon, from HHS, this isn't a theory. This is what are they saying? They're saying we are surveilling H7N9 in China, right? That's what they say. So the new evidence that came up in the last couple months was that January 10th of 2020 was the first person to die. And as soon as I started talking about this on Twitter, Bob Malone comes out of the woodwork and says that's not true. I said, what the hell? What are you talking about? That's not true. How is that not true? The WHO declares the pandemic, right? The WHO is kind of keeping score here. They declared a global pandemic. The WHO tells us the first guy dies January 10th. The other thing that we find out recently is that Mike Pence and Ivanka sent out a tweet saying that the president signed the Moderna deal on January 13th of 2020. That seems a little hasty if the first guy died on January 10th. So if we got 1 dead and 41 cases on the 10th of January, what the hell are we buying vaccines for 3 days later? For what? You got a dead guy in China? How many people die in China every day on a daily basis? 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000 die every day in China. So we got 1 dead guy? Did his eyes fly out of his head? I don't get it. What the hell are you ordering vaccines for 3 days later with 1 dead guy? Then Trump starts repeating 1917 Spanish flu, 1917 Spanish flu, 1917 Spanish flu, everywhere he's going. So what is he talking about? That's not a mistake. It would be a mistake, like if he said it once or twice, and Kaylee hits him in the ribs and says, "Sir, it's not 1918, sir. It's not 1917. It's 1918." And then he corrects himself. He says it like 50 times at 50 different venues. So what is he talking about? When he says 1917 Spanish flu, everybody thinks he's out of his mind. Was there anyone talking about 1918 H1N1, 1918 Spanish flu for 3 years? Yeah, that was me. Was anyone else? Has anybody come on your show since you've done your show? You're coming up on 1,500 episodes. How many people came on your show and said, you know what? It looks like there were 2 viruses and the comorbidity was 1918 H1N1 other than me? Who?
Nope.
Nobody. Right. So who the hell is he talking to? He's up there telling everybody 1917, 1917, 1917, 1917 Spanish flu. Who's he correcting? Joe Rogan? Tucker? Was Tucker talking about 1918? Who's he correcting? Now, I'm not saying he's watching my videos, but I'm telling Laura Ingram it's 1918 H1N1 every day in emails. I'm telling her that. All right. And she puts this up on the screen one night on Fox. You see what this says? 8,600 people dead in New York City and less than 10 in Shanghai. What? How does New York City have more people dead than all of China, according to Johns Hopkins? And why does everybody treat that as a rhetorical question?
Yeah, so 53 million dead in those 3 cities. 53 million population and 18 dead. 8.4 million and 8,000 dead. So it's what's a 8 to 50 is a what 5 6.
So what is your takeaway? So I look at this
1,000-fold. It's almost a 6,000-fold
which is absurd, right? It's absurd. So my takeaway when you look at that, so one of the things I used to do when I was building all these systems for people, when we're working at Oracle, working at Hewlett Packard, whatever, the thing we used to ask the CIOs or the VP of IT or whoever we're meeting with, what is that telling you? What does this tell you? When you look at the screen, you see this. What does that tell you? What's your takeaway from that?
It's ravaging America. We're worse than China. I just got reflexive.
All right. Okay.
America
Definitely
bad,
looks,
China good. I don't know.
Right. New York looks a hell of a lot worse than Shanghai, right? That's a pretty straightforward takeaway, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of an objective takeaway, is that New York City with 8,600 appears to be doing far worse than Shanghai with 7, right? So that's a pretty straightforward takeaway. Not a lot of editorial going on there. My hypothesis looking at this might be, are we certain it's the same virus that we're talking about?
Your second take might be China's, I don't know, are they giving us the real numbers?
Well, if they're not, who declared a pandemic based on what?
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying, general person.
But that's okay.
Yeah,
because
general person watching the news.
So the counter of China is lying has been used by Brad Wenstrup. So Brad Wenstrup and the COVID Select Committee has said, China's lying. China's bad. They didn't give us the information. But that's not true. On the day the first guy died, China gave the WHO the gene sequence. One dead guy. How much sooner than one dead guy should we have asked for the gene sequence when there's no dead guys? The hell do we need it for? Nobody's dead. The day the first guy dies, they posted the gene sequence. So what are they lying about? What was the lie? This is what was happening in America. Blue is influenza and pneumonia. The deaths, the green are the COVID deaths. 1 is January 1st, the first week in January. 2 is the second week in January. Number 5 is the first week in February. Week number 14 is the first week of April. Influenza is going up. It's a good thing COVID showed up, or influenza might be getting more press. 4,000 people a week are dying in January and February and March, and then it goes to 12,000 people in a week from influenza and pneumonia, not COVID and pneumonia. So they start counting all deaths that test positive for COVID. And what do we know about the PCR test? They were cycling it 38, 41 times or whatever to where we were detecting COVID in the cantaloupe and in the cottage cheese. That's how you get the green that high. You test everything everywhere and everybody's positive for COVID.
The analogy I always use is you can look at an 8K photo, scrolling enough, you're going to find pixelation and go, see, it's a bad camera.
Exactly. All the time. So that's what's actually happening. That's what the data shows. And the interesting thing here is this is not something anybody's been actively trying to hide. In other words, this has been hidden in plain sight. It's CDC data and it's death certificate data. So this is from coroners and medical examiners. So this is how many people died from influenza and pneumonia. It was going up. That plateau that begins at number 1, that's 4,000 people a week. So we're at 4,000 a week. And Trump is signing a deal with Moderna. And there's 1 dead guy from COVID, 4,000 a week dying from influenza. What do you think that was for? COVID? Mike Pence tells us January 13th, Moderna partners with the president to develop a vaccine. Why doesn't Mike Pence say COVID? Why doesn't Mike Pence mention SARS-CoV-2 in his tweet or COVID? Is Mike trying to not go to hell This is Mike's way of not telling a lie, is to say, well, what actually happened and how much can I say without telling a lie? He doesn't mention it. And the funny thing is that Ivanka sends her tweet out at 6 o'clock in the morning. 12 minutes after 6 in the morning, Ivanka's tweeting. Mike Pence's tweet is the same day. 7:48 in the morning. So both Mike Pence and Ivanka are tweeting before 8 o'clock in the morning. She's at 6:12 a.m. He's at 7:48 a.m. Same day, November 16th, 2020, November 16th, 2020. And Ivanka says the same thing. Daddy signed a deal with Moderna on the 13th of January. And all of you people need to be very appreciative. Kiss the ring and shut up. Right? Kiss the ring, shut up.
I repeat, 1320. Yeah.
Why would she say it twice? I repeat. And here's Mike Pence. So Mike Pence says it, she says it, they say it on the same day. What do you think the likelihood is that both of them are wrong when she says I repeat? I don't know, it's pretty low. And this guy from the United Nations tells us the first guy died January 10th. And the WHO sent us the sequence. The second guy doesn't die until the 15th, and we don't even know if it's contagious yet on the 14th. There's only one dead guy. I don't even know if the damn thing's contagious. You might have to handle chickens, or we didn't know what was going on the 14th. So what the hell would you be buying vaccines for on the 13th? On January 15th, 5 days after the first guy dies, the second guy dies. Oh, good thing we ordered those vaccines 2 days ago, Tommy. Now we're prepared. Imagine, Tommy, the horror if we got to 3 dead. That would be a 50% increase in deaths. What the hell was going on here? By the 20th of January, there's 3 people dead. Good thing we ordered those vaccines a week ago. You see the problem here?
Mm-hmm.
See, the problem here isn't just this. The problem here is that nobody's talking about it. The problem here is everybody's afraid to address it. Between January 1st and the 22nd of January, so between New Year's Day and 3 weeks later, 13,000 people died from P&I in the U.S. in 3 weeks. There's 9 people dead from COVID on the planet. They're all in Wuhan. There's nobody dead in Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou, nothing. Nobody anywhere. No one's dead in Bangkok. No one's dead in Tokyo. 9 people dead on the planet. 13,000 dead since New Year's Day from influenza just in the States. And he's signing a deal with Moderna. And you guys think that was for COVID? What for? The hell do you need a vaccine for? Shouldn't you wait till there's 1,000 dead, or give me a number. So what is the 1917 Spanish flu? What the hell was he talking about? And then we find out from one of the researchers that when they tested the first people in Wuhan, they also had avian flu. But not H5N1, H7N9. And it turns out that H7N9 is really dangerous.
Want to go back? Then what's the tweet then? H9N2? What's H9N2?
So H9N2 is a gene. So it's a gene.
H7N9's the
well, they're both in there. So it turns out that both are found. And H9N2, it seems to have almost like a parental relationship with H7N9, like H9N2 gives rise to H7N9. And I don't know why, because I'm not a virologist or an epidemiologist. I just know that there's been a bunch of literature linking the two again and again that Amy and Dayu and Bubba's Lamb Chop Shop have all been posting. So I read all that and I'm like, all right, so this is again, they seem to go together pretty well. So The next slide shows us that H7N9 was in green and SARS-CoV-2 is in yellow. So if we've got all this H7N9 in the patients in Wuhan, what's the story with that? And some people have said, well, it was a contamination from vaccines they were getting because there was an outbreak of H7N9 in China, like Crimson Contagion. So when they did the metagenomic test that shows everything that's in you, what it showed was that there was 2% SARS-CoV-2. That's the yellow stuff at about 530 on the circle down at the bottom. So 2% in yellow, SARS-CoV-2. But if you go up to about 4 o'clock, 8% was influenza. I thought 8%'s 4 times more than 2%, but DEI and all that, they're probably the same now, right? So 8% and 2% now are equal. Why would you think it was the SARS-CoV-2 killing somebody and not the thing that there's 4 times more? I don't know. All right, so we have this big outbreak in 2022 of avian influenza. We know the number one comorbidity of COVID is influenza. See the connection here? Mm-hmm. Europe has the worst avian flu epidemic in Europe's history ever, like caveman ever. Back to Romans and chariots, right? No, nothing ever this bad going back to Caligula, okay? Nothing has come close to what we saw in 2021, 2022 in Europe in the chickens. And the thing that's interesting here is nobody really heard about that. Why? Why didn't nobody hear about that? How do you not hear about this? Sounds like a pretty big deal. Well, turns out the outbreak started in 2013 in China, but it wasn't the WHO who was tracking it. It was the UN Food and Agriculture Division, the people in charge of chickens. And they said, by the end of May 2013, we got this H7N9 and it's over here and it's over here, and we got pigs floating down the river. Not good. And meanwhile, Yoshihiro Kawaoka is doing gain of function on this thing. So this H7N9 outbreak is in China. It's in the chickens, in the poultry, in the eggs. They develop vaccines. They start culling chickens. And the Pentagon starts monitoring all this. Pentagon. We need AMRAAMs. We need, what do we need here? Why do we need?
Nuke it.
Yeah, do we need laser guided or heat guided or infrared? How are we gonna? What's the Pentagon gonna do about a respiratory infection? So then, Azar under Trump kicks off Operation Crimson Contagion in January 2019, basically to figure out what we're gonna do, because this was handed to Trump his first week in the White House. You have to understand this. This starts in 2013 in China. That's Obama. Obama's in the White House. Obama's kind of the biowarfare president. This thing starts. Kawaoka's doing gain of function on the same virus. And next thing you know, Trump comes into the White House and they say, congratulations, sir. You do know about the chickens in China, right? And he's like, what? Chickens in China? What are you guys talking about? Oh, sir, we're going to debrief you on this. There's a wicked outbreak of avian influenza in China, taking out about a quarter of their chicken population. There's no eggs. It's really, in fact, they stopped, by the way, did you know they stopped selling tamago in Japan? There were no eggs. They stopped selling tamago in Japan because there were no eggs, okay?
What's tamago?
So, that's egg sushi. Okay. Sushi, you get the little omelet. It's kind of sweet.
Yeah.
So Crimson Contagion is all about an H7N9 outbreak in China. It's not a simulation, not 8 months long. There's no 8-month long simulations. They last for an hour or 3 hours or a day or what have you. So when Kayleigh McEnany continues to carry these documents around, it becomes apparent that's kind of really what's going on. Nothing in her hand says COVID. Nothing says SARS-CoV-2. Here she is with Azar and the president just getting off the helicopter on the front lawn. It's all Crimson Contagion stuff. Why? I thought Crimson Contagion wrapped up in August of 2019. Why does she have something that says January 2020 in April of 2020? She doesn't join the team, by the way, till April 2020. Okay? So she comes in, everything in her hand says Crimson Contagion, page 7 and 9. And for some reason, it says January 2020, even though the program wrapped up in August of 2019. This was the real pandemic, kids. This was what was really happening. COVID was the cover-up. And Peter Daszak and EcoHealth kind of came to the rescue. Langley says to Fauci, Tony, how the hell are we supposed to hide a pandemic, Tony? We got to hide Kawaoka's H7N9? How are we supposed to do that? Fauci says it's easy. You know Peter Daszak at EcoHealth, right? He's got 12,000 viruses at Wuhan. Pick one. Pick one with some bells and whistles. Hopefully it's got CGG on it. They won't stop talking about it for 5 years. And let that out. And then don't put the H7N9 in the PCR test. No, how's anybody going to find it? It's not in the test kit. Neither is tuberculosis. You take a test, do a PCR test on somebody. Is it ever going to come back positive for tuberculosis? No. Tuberculosis isn't in the test. Neither is H7N9. That's how you hide a pandemic. Nothing in her hands says SARS-CoV-2 or COVID. Nothing. Everything was about bird flu, but not H5N1. H5N1 is the new COVID. It's the new Stephen Paddock. It's the new Mary Lou Danley. It's the new distraction. H5N1? There haven't been 1,000 cases of it in 25 years. In the last 25 years, there haven't been 1,000 cases of H5N1 in humans. H7N9, we had more cases in the last 5 years and more people die with it in the last 5 years than H5N1 in the last 25 years. Okay, and I think the pandemic itself was H7N9, which means it really killed 7 million people, not H5N1. This. So Kawaoka's doing gain of function on this thing. And the reason I thought it was H1N1 1918, and it so easily became this, both of these viruses don't need something called trypsin. And trypsin, I guess, is some sort of a protein that's needed to go into the ACE receptor, ACE2 receptor. This doesn't need that. Neither of them do. 1917 avian influenza and 1918 H1N1 both have this capability or quality. So what that means is they don't need an ACE2 receptor. They go anywhere. They can go infect your kidneys and go infect your sinuses and your ability to smell. It can infect your optic nerve, and now you can't see out of one eye. It can cross the blood-brain barrier. All right, so this is a new version, a highly pathogenic version of this thing that emerges later on. And they're talking about it has this ability to affect multiple organs. And that's kind of the key. No trypsin needed. It can infect your kidneys. It can infect your spleen. It can infect your red blood cells, your nervous system, your circulatory system itself, your capillaries. 2020, it goes highly pathogenic. And it sure sounds like Kawaoka's gain-of-function strain. 40% case fatality rate. This is what they're trying to hide right now, Tommy, with H5N1. In other words, H5N1 is not the thing that the Pentagon was all worked up about. H5N1 is not Crimson Contagion. H5N1 is not what the CDC was making vaccines for. Here's Canada, took a toll on Canada, took a toll on South Africa, lost 30% of their chickens. In South Africa, the price of eggs more than doubled. It hits Japan. Japan's not in on it. Japan's not part of this WEF nonsense with Klaus Schwab. They don't listen to that guy. They think he's manga with his outfits, with the shoulder pads.
He is.
Right? They look at him and they're like, dude, you belong in one of the manga cartoons. What are you doing? Get out of here. They don't listen to him. Japan's not in on any of this stuff. But Japan is suffering one hell of a bird flu outbreak and killing chickens left and right. Nobody seems to know about that. It's happening all over the world, Tommy. Netherlands, Germany, Poland, Brazil. It was a bird flu outbreak. COVID ran its course as the cover-up. People, not buying into the COVID thing anymore. So now the new cover-up is H5N1. H5N1 there's not been 1,000 cases of it in 25 years. It's the new COVID. It's the new distraction. Okay? Yeah, this doesn't say H5N1. The Pentagon's monitoring H7N9, not H5N1. There's no reports. In other words, there's no parallel report that came out a year ago or 2 years ago like this for H5N1. This is all H7N9. This is serious stuff. This is hardcore. This is not H5N1. H5N1 is a new cover-up. They funded gain of function on H7N9 in 2014 under Obama, 3 weeks after the gain of function pause. Why would you do that? This strain is already devastating China. The UN Food and Agriculture Organization is monitoring it. And you're going to start making a new version of it that's more deadly? What the hell do you need that for? We fund it. Fauci funds it. Obama approves it during the gain of function pause. And next thing you know, in 2020, it goes highly pathogenic in China. And they say it's so weird because it looks like it's almost like a completely different strain of the same thing with 4 changes, just like Kawaoka has talked about in the past. So Kawaoka is funded and is given a pass. It says your grant is funded, so the gain of function pause is voluntary. So up to you. Up to you. We used to have test kits for this stuff, but then the CDC pulled them. They pulled the test kits so that you couldn't find H7N9. And then the test kit came back on the market in January of this year. But it's not available commercially. You can't buy it from ePlex or Panther or BioFire. Not in their respiratory array. You have to order it from the CDC. So right now, all the physicians out there, unless they've ordered this test kit, they can't find H7N9. There's no way to detect it without this particular kit from the CDC. Isn't that odd? Another great way to hide a pandemic. So here, this is the BioFire respiratory panel. There's no H7N9 in here. Okay, so you're not going to find it. That's how influenza disappeared. Influenza disappeared simply because, it's like the best illusions, Tommy, are the simplest ones. Okay? The simplest explanations are the best illusions. Influenza disappears from Earth because H7 is not in the legend. They don't track it. All right? How are you going to chart it if you don't have a color assigned to it? So when it becomes the dominant strain and there's no color, it looks like there's nothing there.
Yeah.
And that's why influenza disappeared from Earth, because the WHO doesn't track H7N9. It's that simple. And it's not in the test kit. But what you get to then that is inexplicable, and I'd love to hear, Malone or Corey or one of these big shots explain this. This is like all the work that was going on vaccines January 28th of 2020. January 22nd, there were 9 people dead. The hell are you guys carrying on for? 9 people dead on the planet, and you've mobilized all these companies to go build vaccines? What if we don't get to 50 dead? What if this thing kind of peters out at 32, 35 dead? That's it. Oh, 36 guy died. 37th, that's it. We need vaccines? What the hell do we need vaccines for? Novartis had a vaccine ready for H7N9 going into clinical trials in 2013. Wow. Pfizer got an order for mRNA influenza vaccines in 2018. Huh. And Moderna was working on an H7, this is the second one from the top, and was part of their presentation was, we've got the H7N9 vaccine in production. It's already fully enrolled. The GLP toxicology is complete. Formulation's licensed. The Indicta has been filed. So they're making progress. This thing is moving along. And that's your H7N9 story. So the issue here is it appears there were 2 pandemics based on the data. Right? Simply when we go to the charts and we look at the 2, the blue and the green, right? And you can't hide the blue without the green. It's kind of obvious we're looking at 2 different things here. I mean, one of these things was ongoing and one of these things shows up. And when COVID showed up, thousands of people were dying from influenza. Now, the other thing is that Tamiflu, oseltamivir, is not really effective against avian flu. There are strains of H5N1 that don't respond to oseltamivir, which is Tamiflu. And H7N9, I don't think responds to it at all. So that's kind of an older medication. The newer stuff like Xofluza absolutely treats this stuff, but it's expensive. Xofluza is like $150, but it's only 1 dose, meaning you take it today and tomorrow you're better. It's gone in a day with 1 dose, but it's $150 for that 1 dose. But Tamiflu, oseltamivir, not effective against H7N9 and certain strains of H5N1, but there haven't been 1,000 cases of H5N1 in people. So all this workup about H5N1, that's the new cover-up. COVID was the last one. H5N1 is the new one. H5N1 hasn't infected 1,000 people in 25 years. It's not a threat. The threat is what the Pentagon is worried about. Now, if there's anybody in the audience that has the H5N1 Pentagon documents, by all means, share them. I'd love to see them. But we haven't gotten to 1,000 cases. 1,000 cases of H5N1 in human beings in 25 years. H5N1 is not the threat. What they keep talking about with this disease X setup story thing is obviously they don't predict things that haven't already happened. So when Dr. Redfield talks about it's going to be a bird flu, it already is a bird flu, dope. We just had the worst avian out in history. So when Redfield gets on camera and says COVID was nothing compared to the bird flu we're going to have, we just looked at the documentation and said we just had the worst bird flu outbreak in history. in Europe and in America. We looked at Japan. We looked at South Africa. What the hell are these guys talking about? The next pandemic is going to be a bird flu. The last pandemic was a bird flu.
This week we're going to have pollen.
There you go. So it appears this has been ongoing since 2013. It was handed to Trump and his administration day one. Day one. He comes in, it's already underway in China, 2017. And next thing you know, it's going highly pathogenic. And he's like, what the hell is this? We didn't do this. Obama's guys did this. They did the gain of function during 2014. And Trump comes in, he's like, I got to clean up this mess. It's his days are. Figure something out. Here's some money. Go tell me what to do. Figure out, what am I supposed to, it's an election year? And I'm supposed to tell everybody stay away from Kentucky Fried Chicken and El Pollo Loco? No, we ain't doing that. Skip the chicken chimichanga? No. I can't tell America no more eggs. You can't, no. Not in an election year. You figure this out. And if the answer is blame China, I could probably live with that. Okay. If the answer is blame China, somehow I'll figure out a way to live with that. Anybody know Peter Daszak? Peter Daszak's got viruses in China. If he releases one, we can blame it on that virus and just not put H7N9 in the PCR tests. All those tests that we say, get those off the market, destroy them. And now there's no H7N9 tests out there. Nobody's going to find it. So the reason I have very little respect for physicians is nobody addressed the number one comorbidity. The number one comorbidity was influenza. Over 500,000 Americans died with the number one comorbidity. And all I hear about is ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. They don't treat H7N9. That's why 530,000 people died with both. And so it was that myopathy, the fact that people didn't look a little broader and say, is this COVID thing killing people, or is it COVID plus this that's really killing people? And if so, maybe I need to treat this other thing. That didn't happen. And therefore, I kind of lost respect for pretty much every physician in America. There is not one physician that I have heard from or spoken to that said, early on, I realized it was a combination of COVID and influenza. We started prescribing Xofluza and it wiped it. All I hear is ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. They are not used to treat highly pathogenic avian influenza. And therefore, people lost limbs and people died. 530,000 people died with influenza, pneumonia, and COVID. And so it should have been a wake-up call. I published a film early on, and it was called How Is This Not News? And I did another one called Is It True? Let me show you Is It True? This was March 21st of 2020. I made just a quick little video. I don't even think it's a minute long. And it talks about what was happening in China. And it's like, well, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I'm looking at the Johns Hopkins map and I built the system. So if I'm wrong, somebody needs to kind of speak up here. This was March 21st, 2020.
Oh
So again, you may not like me, or you may not trust me, but that's the Johns Hopkins map everybody's using on television.
Yeah, that's the.
And if it tells you there's not 10 people dead in Shanghai, Beijing, or Hong Kong, why is no one addressing that? No one wants to say, well, wait a second. That kind of, we should at least call a timeout here and find out, well, what's that all about? So then that kind of, oh, I hit the wrong button. That kind of takes you to this next question, which is, how does the news media not check Hong Kong? So in other words, I never really heard of Wuhan. I never heard of Wuhan. So am I the only one? Why didn't Anderson Cooper think it would be important to check Hong Kong? Now, 10 people dead. Shanghai, Beijing, Hong Kong. Nobody noticed. Nobody checked. Nobody thought that was important. And they still won't touch it. And that, to me, is way too creepy. It's like, how do you not talk about this stuff? Okay, if I was in a gorilla costume, or some latex mask, okay, I get it. And I was in a version of that, but that's over. The data is the same. You don't have to be one of the guys who built the system to click on Hong Kong and see that there's not 10 dead. And this continued, this went on. This wasn't like it was an anomaly for a week or two. They didn't get to 10 dead for some time. Now, ultimately, they got to hundreds dead, but not tens of thousands. So if that's the case, why is everybody ignoring it? Why is everybody ignoring the number one comorbidity? Why is everybody ignoring the worst avian influenza outbreak in the history of mankind globally? Because that was the real pandemic. And they're trying to cover it up now with H5N1. And I'm afraid that's not going to work. I think people are too wary now. But again, my trust of the physicians, it's pretty much gone. It's like, how do you listen to anybody who ignores everything I just showed you? No one wants to come on the show with me, right? It's one of the reasons why I love Scott Jensen and Dave Collum are brave enough to listen to my crap. But at the end of the day, nobody wants to face this material. It's too intense. And we're not even talking about the asteroids. We're just talking about the viruses. Forget the field hospitals. That's a separate story. This H7N9 outbreak was very, very real. The CDC was building vaccines for it. Novartis was in clinical trials. Pfizer got their order in 2018. So when Trump signs a deal January 13th with Moderna, and there's 4,000 people dying a week, that tells me the Moderna shot was not for COVID. It was for the thing killing 4,000 people a week. So it doesn't change all the VAERS stuff. So all the side effects, myocarditis, all that crap, that's the same. All that's legit. It's just the vial said it was for COVID-19, but it was not.
Spider just crawled up on my mic boom.
It's spider season. It's definitely spider season.
No, sir.
Indeed. So, sorry, Spider. So that's kind of the story, my friend, is that now it's time for people to face the music. Now it's time for them to look at these facts and address them, not pretend they don't exist. January 10th, the first person died. Bob Malone says that's not true. Well, show us some data, Bob. Show us deadchineseguy.com. Something. Show us a link to something, Bob. If you're going to refute what I'm saying and tell people in public that I'm confused, how the hell am I confused? I just listened to the guy from The Who say January 10th, the first guy died. I don't think I'm confused. So why is everybody afraid of me? Nobody wants to come on the show and talk about this stuff with me? Why is that? Why do you think that is?
From what little experience I do have through this podcast is no one wants to be first. I was interviewing Malone and McCall before they went on Rogan. You see Cuomo coming out now talking about ivermectin, but I was, getting banned from platforms 4 years ago for that. There is no one wants to be first. They want it to be, you don't want to wait till it's mainstream because then you're a hack. But you also don't want to be first. You want to be like second or third. When the first guy's gone out, when the scout guy has gone out and realized there's no tripwires, then you want to get out and be like, I'm good. I'm a vigilante. Yeah. I'm sharing the truth. Why I have
Tim very little respect.
No ship here. None of them want to touch it until it's. You don't want to wait.
Look
until
at Adam Curry.
Yeah,
look at Adam Curry. Yeah. Look at how brave was it for him to say, I watched Tommy's podcast in spite of the fact the guy's in costume. Yeah. I watched it, and holy mackerel.
Yeah.
This changes everything.
You don't want to be the first landing boat on D-Day, but you don't want to be the 10th. You want to go just enough to be like, all right, you can survive, right?
So tip of the hat to Adam Curry, right? Yeah. Watching the show, watching the video, taking it in. Tip of the hat to Dave Collum and Scott Jensen for putting up with my costumes for the last couple of years. And but at the end of the day, the data is solid. The data is strong. Yeah. And people, all these pundits are losing credibility the longer they ignore these facts. So that's what I'll leave you with.
It's cowardice is what it is. It's, or it's
I'm eager. I'm eager. So I'll come on your show anytime to debate anybody with the facts that I've been presenting, right? So if anybody says, no, he's wrong. It's not this. It wasn't this. It was this. It was some other thing. Okay, let's, I'll show you mine. You show me yours, right? So what do you got? But the fact that people missed so much so early means why would I listen to you now?
Yeah.
You didn't notice Hong Kong. You didn't notice Shanghai. You didn't notice Beijing. You didn't notice that they put the field hospitals away 10 days later, whether or not they were for asteroids or not. They only stood for 10 days. You didn't notice that.
I'm starting to think that Gulf of Tonkin thing was cooked. Breaking news in 2024.
Right. Exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
starting to think we wanted Japan to attack Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
Breaking.
Yeah.
Don't touch anything else.
Yeah. Maybe Lee Harvey Oswald couldn't make that shot from that window.
Starting to think that Boston Tea Party was the beginnings of a guerrilla warfare. I'm now examining the documents, and it's cowardice. Yeah, it's what it is. And
so again, I'm eager to talk to anybody, debate anybody. I did a debate with Charles Rixey, and he came to the debate and started explaining or defending influenza burden. And I was laughing so hard inside that milk was coming out of my nose, and I wasn't drinking milk. So that's how hard I was laughing on the inside. It was like listening to people talk about 30,000 people die a year from influenza. No, it's like 180,000 a year. Yeah. So there's been so much cover-up stuff going on that so many people just aren't aware of. And so that's why I had to give up the costume, was so that the material will be taken seriously. And for people to not take this material. So in other words, I'm a whistleblower. I'm the guy who built the mapping system. I came forward and said, what's the matter with you people? You never heard of Hong Kong. You can't click on Hong Kong. Once you hear that, you can't unhear it. So now it's their choice to ignore it. Therefore, I have zero respect for any of them. It's that simple.
Yeah.
How do you ignore the number one comorbidity? How did you ignore that for 4 years? So until they come forward and say, wow, this changes. I was with a doctor a week ago, had me on his podcast. He's like, this is mind blowing. This changes everything and it explains everything. And I said that's the right reaction. When you see this, it explains everything. It's like, holy mackerel. This explains everything. Everything falls into place. That's the right reaction. Anything other than that is suspicious. So
yeah, no, there's no good explanation. It's either they're controlled opposition, it's cowardice, it's ignorance, it's lack of intellectual horsepower, it's money bit. There is no good explanation. The only good explanation can be is, oh, I didn't see that.
Well, I'm humble enough. Yeah. I'm humble enough to tell everybody on microphone, on camera, that I was wrong for 3.5 years.
Yeah. No, you and I have gone into this in depth. No, it's
right. So I, on the show, came out, told Dave Collum, told Dr. Scott Jensen, said, guys, I screwed up. I was wrong for 3.5 years. I thought it was H1N1, 1918, reconstructed. It was off by a year. Trump was dropping hints, and I didn't see him. Okay. I don't hear anybody else say, I got this part wrong.
Yeah.
I don't hear it from anybody. I say it all the time. So if anybody wants to come on your show and debate this topic, I'm happy to do it. I'm wrong all the time. I've got 2 ex-wives that'll attest to that, right? They'll tell you he's wrong all the time. So it's not a big deal to me.
Yeah.
Happy to come on the show. And if I'm wrong and it was something other than what I think it was, great. But I think I've got the evidence pretty much sewed up.
Yeah. Well,
thank you, Tommy.
Yes, sir. Yeah, the challenge is out there. Anyone wants to come on, shoot me an email, Tommy's podcast, TOMMYSPODCAST @gmail.com. But yeah, John, at the moment, we do got to wrap it up. I got prep for the next show. As always, thank you for your time, dude. Thank you for coming on, and it's a nifty suit you got on, so I'm a little jealous.
Thank you, sir. You look pretty sharp. Just don't wear khakis with the shirt, or people are going to think you're part of the Freedom Front. So careful. No khakis.
No, I'll get the FBI windbreaker. Don't worry. They know where I am. They can ship it to me.
All right. Thanks again, Tommy. I really appreciate it.
Dude. Till next time. Thank you so much. We'll schedule the next one. Guys, please go in the description. Please go follow us Twitter. All that good stuff. John, thank you so much, my man.